Passover is a holiday. It commemorates the time in history when the Jewish people were freed from slavery in Egypt. The Jewish people were slaves and they wanted to be free. The Pharaoh had decided that all Jewish male babies were to be killed. This is because he felt that the Jewish people were becoming too strong. Passover is the 15th and 21st of the song. Seder is held on the first night.
Sam and Kate and I'm Max, and we're going to be interviewing Sam about Jewish stuff. First, can you tell us about the days of Hanukkah and what goes on in Hanukkah?
Okay, so during Hanukkah, during the day it's just normal, but then at night at sunset you light one candle, and there's a main candle on the menorah that you light all the other candles with. And so it's 8 nights, and so the first night you light 1, the second night you light 2, until you get to 8. And then you say a prayer over the candles, and then if you want to, you can spin a dreidel for fun, and then you give presents to people.
What kind of foods do you eat during Hanukkah?
Just normal foods.
Are there any special Jewish dishes that you guys eat?
Not really, no.
No. Well, we have a couple of vocab words we'd like to ask you. Can you give us the definition of the difference between bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah?
A bar mitzvah is for a boy and a bat mitzvah is for a girl. And
what age do they have there?
A bar mitzvah is when you're 13 and a bat mitzvah is when you're 12 or 13.
What is a famous place that the Jewish people go to pray at?
It's basically just called a synagogue, but the holiest place in the world is in Israel. It's called the Western Wall.
The Western Wall. How often do you go to the synagogue?
You go once a week on Saturdays from 9 to 1.
And you guys pray there?
Uh-huh.
Can you tell us what a Shabbat is? Shabbat?
Shabbat, yeah. It starts Friday at sunset and it lasts till Saturday at sunset. And it's the day of rest, because God on the 7th day rested. So we're not supposed to use electronics or do work during that time.
Who is kosher?
Kosher is what you can or can't eat. Because being kosher, you can't eat pork. You can't have beef and milk together. And you can't eat shellfish.
Shellfish?
Yeah.
What's the difference between the Hebrews and the Israelites?
There's not really a difference between them.
And who's the most famous person, King David, King Solomon?
Probably the most famous person is Abraham, because he was the first Jewish person.
And what is Moses famous for?
He led the Jews out of Egypt because they were in slavery there for a long time. And he split the Red Sea so they could go through it.
All right. Thank you for letting us interview you.
You're welcome.
Follow me, my friend, where I will lead you to freedom. My friends, I must go to the top of this hill. The Lord is calling me. The Lord has given me these laws that you will live by for the rest of your lives. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's. This is a picture of King Solomon's temple. This was the greatest achievement of King Solomon's. Solomon's father wanted to build a great temple for God a generation earlier, but a divine edict forbidden him to do so. This temple was very glorious and elaborate, but the most important room of the temple named the Holy of Holies contained no furniture and only the 2 tablets of the 10 Commandments. This temple is said to be 180 feet long, 90 feet wide, and 50 feet tall. This temple was a huge place for prayer and was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BCE. Even though it was destroyed, 70 years later another temple was built on the same site, but the tablets with the 10 Commandments went missing. The Holy of the Holies room, even though it didn't contain the tablets in the new temple, it was still one of the holiest places in Jerusalem.
The Jewish scriptures, which consist of 3 divisions, the Torah, the prophets, and the writings. Torah, the whole body of the Jewish sacred writings and tradition, including the oral tradition. Menorah. The menorah is a 7-branch candle which has been a symbol of Judaism for almost 3,000 years. Shabbat. A Shabbat is a day of the rest from sundown Friday to sundown Saturday, commemorating God's rest of the 7th day in the book of Genesis. Talit, a traditional Jewish prayer shawl. Kibbutz, a collective farm or settlement owned by its members in the modern Israel. Children are reared collectively. Passover, a Jewish festival celebrating the exodus of Israelites from Egypt. Talmud, a collection of Jewish writings related to the practical application of Judaical law.
Jews, Christians, and Muslims all agree that Abraham is the patriarch of their religion and founder of monotheism. Judaism and Christianity teach that the story of Abraham is more than the story of one man. Abraham becomes the patriarch of the Jewish nation as he passes 10 severe tests of his beliefs in God and God's covenant with him. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam teach that Abraham enters into a covenant with God in which both sides make commitments. Abraham is required to leave his homeland and to follow the directions into the land that God promised Abraham and his descendants. God promised to bless Abraham and his descendants and to make of them a great nation. Asking Abraham to leave his father's house is the first test of the covenant. The most significant demand God makes on Abraham is that he and his descendants totally commit to a belief in one and only one God. This is the foundation of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. When Sarah and Abraham are in Egypt on their way to the Promised Land, Hagar, an Egyptian girl, becomes a handmaiden for Sarah. Since Sarah is childless, she tells Abraham he should conceive a child with Hagar. However, once Hagar becomes pregnant, her relationship with Sarah turns bitter. Hagar leaves home, but an angel of God tells her she will bear a son, Ishmael, and he will be the head of many tribes, and she should return home to Abraham and Sarah. Hagar returns, and Ishmael is born. 13 years later, God promises Abraham and Sarah will bear a son who will inherit the covenant. After Sarah gives birth to Isaac, she insists that Abraham cast out Hagar and Ishmael. Once again, God reassures him that Ishmael and his offspring will make a great nation. Abraham reluctantly sends them